Hey everyone, hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be wrapping up all the things that I read for Read Historical Fiction 2025, which is a historical fiction readathon that I host with several other wonderful, amazing booktubers. I definitely want to shout them out right here at the beginning. So if you're not following Gloria Z. Thompson or Gloria at the channel Gloria Z. Thompson, go follow her. She's amazing, as well as every other host for this event. Melinda at Web of Stories, Brittany at Literarily Smitten, and Charlotte at Coiny Reads. These ladies were gracious enough to co-host this with me. We are all huge fans of historical fiction and actually history books as well. We have a lot in common. And I don't know, it was just so great to host with other enthusiastic readers such as these women. So here's what we did. We all contributed one prompt to the historical fiction event. And I'm just going to go through what I read prompt by prompt and tell you whether I recommend the books or not. In all fairness, I did wrap a lot of these books up in like this video that I made saying it was the last 8 books I read that I put up, I don't know, several weeks ago. So I'm going to keep some of the books that I've already talked about. I'm going to keep in talking about them now, I'm going to keep it brief. So yeah, just so you know, and it's not, I just don't, for those of you who have watched that video, I don't want to repeat myself too much. And if you haven't, then hopefully I'll give you a bite-sized piece of what the book is and whether I recommend it or not. So that we don't have to go through like the whole rigmarole of how I felt about it and all of that. It'll be kind of like an abbreviated version. Okay, well this is not I'm not abbreviating right now, so that's we're already starting off poorly. Anyways, if you're new, then know that I'm Shelly. I'm a huge fan of historical fiction, and it's my most read genre, at least this year. I love it so much. And yeah, if you're enjoying the vibe, maybe subscribe, like the video. But without any further rambling on, because I've done a ton of that, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. Gloria at the channel Gloria Z. Thompson contributed the prompt of read a work of historical fiction about a specific event. And I struggled mightily with this because going into it, I wanted to be like, this is the event that I'm reading about, and to like shape my reading because I wanted to know about that event. And instead, I just I struggled with it. I don't know if it's just because the books that were appealing to me were not about a very specific event. Anyways, if you have recommendations about books about a specific event, please let me know because I struggled with it. However, I did have like 3 books that are loosely about a specific event. Oh gosh. Okay, the first one is The Bridge to San Luis Rey by Thornton Wilder. This is an incredibly slim book, which I have over. Let me go grab it. All right, here it is. The Bridge of San Luis Rey, Thornton Wilder. It's a Pulitzer Prize winning book. I have an interest in Pulitzer Prize winning books. It's about a bridge that collapses in 1714 in Peru. And it's structured like short stories. And in each story, we're focusing on one of the persons, because there are 5 people who were on the bridge that fell. And we're focusing on the persons who fell and their connections to the town and to each other. It was, I don't know, it was interesting to me. It was very on the nose. It wasn't subtle. There you go. It wasn't very subtle, although some of the writing was sort of cuckoos bananas crazy, a little bizarro, which quite worked. And I think it would be overall a really great book to study because it is so short and there are a lot of themes that emerge, like the connections we have for one another and the love that carries us through difficult situations or carries us through our lives. But even as I'm saying that, I feel like it's a little bit of a tired, like a tiring read because it was so on the nose. So would I recommend this? Probably not. No, not really. Feels horrible to say that I don't recommend a Pulitzer Prize winning book. I don't know, there's just something weird about that. Okay, the next book I read about a specific event was The Light Years, which is the book 1 of the Cazalet Chronicles by Elizabeth Jane Howard. This is set just after World War I, and it's following 3 brothers, their wives, and their spinster sister. And it's about 2 summers, and in these summers, there is a ton of characters. It's like 40 characters that you follow follow, and somehow it's quite easy to keep them all straight, which is a feat in and of itself. This book is primarily about setting. And so we're in England. We're at this, where is it at? Home place in Sussex in 1937. And it's really about their picnicking, their summer, the adventures they get up. There is some darkness in it. And overall, I would recommend it, especially if you're somebody who is very okay with quiet, sort of slow-moving, setting-focused books, because it definitely has that. Although, again, there is some darkness in it, just so you know. I didn't mention what specific event this is about. So it is really about the lead up to World War II and sort of how that hovers as a dark cloud over this family. And it's like, you know, like we all know, we readers know what's going to happen, but they don't know, but you can kind of feel it in the air, which is, it was really an interesting read. Okay, then the last one, which is a little bit of a stretch in terms of like specific event, but it is the Queens of Crime, not the Creams of Crime. Oh, okay. The Queens of Crime by Marie Benedict. So this is about, this is very fiction-y, because it is about Dorothy L. Sayers, Agatha Christie, Nio Marsh, Marjorie Allingham, and Baroness Emma Orczy, I think. Anyways, these are all writers of a certain time period that were writing mystery novels, although the main character is Dorothy L. Sayers, and then her sidekick, if you want to even call it that, or like the secondary character, is going to be Agatha Christie. And the specific event is that these women are like so tired of being treated like second-class citizens in this writers group, and they're trying to like prove their worth, you know? And so what they do is that they get this harebrained idea to solve an actual murder, but there was an actual murder. Like Marie Benedict based this on an actual murder that happened. Now she took a lot of creative liberties, but it was the murder of May Daniels. And so these 5 women turn into the detectives that they often write about and try and discover the murderer and the cause of the murder and all of that. And so it ended up being a really joyful book. I really missed out adding this to one of my best books of the year. I made a video about that, and I really should have added this in because it was such a joyful read. It was so good and so charming, and it, you know, it had its ups and downs in terms of like tension, and there was a great balance of lightness, and some of it was genuinely funny. And so I just want to at least give it some credit here that it was a fantastic book to have read. And again, so I would definitely recommend it. And it was probably one of the best reads I read for the event. Melinda threw us all for a loop by creating this prompt that was kind of tricky, but it actually was less hard to read for than the specific event one for whatever reason. Her prompt was read a work of alternative historical fiction, which I really had to like rack my brain. She also did a video, a recommendations video for alternative historical fiction books, so she helped us out on it. But the book that she mentioned and the one that I already owned was Rodom by Curtis Sittenfeld. This is because the alternative historical fiction premise is what if, I don't know, what if the Vietnam War went on for much longer than it actually did? What if Germany won World War II? That kind of thing. The what if is less fraught in this book. It is what if Hillary didn't marry Bill. They dated, but there was that moment where Bill proposes, and instead of saying yes, Rodom says no, or Hillary says no. And so what would her life have been like? And it was really, really entertaining. This is a recommend from me because it was really all about, I don't know, like I think that Hillary, the imagination of Sittenfeld, was really wonderful in thinking about the relationships that Rodom would have had, the way that she would have developed in her political career, reimagining the election of 2020. There was just all of that, and it was kind of a joyful. It was very much a joyful reading experience. There were some parts that were incredibly funny. My camera battery died, and so I'm like, it gives you no warning. It's just like down, off. I mean, it gives you some warning. It's like low battery, but sometimes the low battery lasts a long time, and then all of a sudden it's just like Done. All right, so what I was going to say is that this was just a light read, considering it was about American politics, and a very joyful read. And it was very entertaining. I was very entertained by this. Brittany from the channel Literally Smitten contributed the prompt of read a work of historical fiction with a dual timeline. Again, this was kind of tricky for me. Everyone contributed kind of tricky prompts. And I read Briefly a Delicious Life by Nell Stevens. So in this is it's a historical fiction and also genre bending, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But we have two timelines. The first one is set in 1473, in which we're following the life of a young girl named Blanca. And then fast forward, we're also in 1838. We're following the writer George Sand, who was known to have dressed very masculine for the time, but was a writer and have a very avant-garde life. I think multiple partners. But in this section that we're reading about, she is with George Chopin, and he is very ill, and she has her two children with her. And it's got themes of acceptance and feeling like outsiders. But what's interesting is that Blanca, and this is right away, you find out Blanca is a ghost, and she's like watching George Sand and Frederick Chopin. She's watching how the town is reacting to them, and she's looking at the nuance of their relationship, and she is like deeply, immediately in love with George Sand. But Blanca also has her own story that we're trying to figure out, and I liked Blanca's story better. I think a great historical fiction book that has a dual timeline, you like all the timelines the same. Like, it's hard to choose which one you like more. And I found that I very much preferred Blanca's storyline. And I was kind of speed reading through the George Sand parts, or the George Sand, I don't know, the other Chopin, the 1838 timeline. I was speed reading through that, and I was realizing that I really liked the Blanca parts. I was really committed to her as a character, and I was not very committed to the other timeline, which is kind of a bummer, but still a pretty good book, and no regrets having read this. Then Charlotte at the channel Coiny Reads contributed the prompt of read a work of historical fiction about the arts, which has a very broad meaning. It could mean theater or painting or literature. It really could mean any of that. So I had And Only to Deceive by Tasha Alexander. Now this is a Lady Emily book. This is a series. It's fun. They're murder mysteries, and our main protagonist in like the very first page talks about how she is a widow, but she got married to her husband incredibly quickly, and they didn't really have a relationship, and so she's struggling to mourn her wonderful husband. But she didn't even know if he was wonderful or not. She didn't have time to get to know him. Oh, hello. Through this book, you get to know her friends and her husband's friends, and this could have even counted as like dual timeline, because we have her husband's diary that was written before the present timeline, weeks and months before the present timeline. The present timeline is Lady Emily sort of retroactively getting to know her husband, which was really kind of fun. And in this, the reason why it's about the arts is because they're at the heart of this. We're trying to figure out what happened to her husband. Like, was it murder? Was it not? But there's also this whole storyline about forgeries, and who is head of the forgery ring. And also Lady Emily herself is getting very into ancient Greek art and ancient Greek literature. She's always like, do you prefer Achilles or Hector? Which is really cool. And just looking, there's a lot of descriptions of different statues and different pieces that were forged. So it was really it was a really interesting and fun read. So it's put me on to Tasha Alexander. I want to read more from her. I was looking up the series. I think there's something like 11 books in the series, 9, 10, 11, something in this series. And they all range. All the books are about 300 pages, and they're really like a great little break while also being set during the Victorian time period. It just, I don't know, it was really just a fun sort of brain break of a book, which was great. And then the other book that could double as my prompt was read a work of historical fiction about a real extraordinary person. But it also, my person has to do with the arts. So I read Diva by Daisy Goodwin. Now this is about Marie Callas, who is an opera singer who had a relationship with Aristotle Onassis. I didn't know anything about Onassis. I know he married Jackie Kennedy, and gave her the last name Onassis. And but I didn't know that he was a very, very, very wealthy person. And the thing is that in the cover, it talks about how Marie Callas was known to have had this incredibly beautiful voice, and that her mother made her sing for Nazi soldiers when she was a child. And I really thought it was going to be more about that relationship, but really it was about her relationship with Aristotle Onassis. And I did not like this book. I would not recommend it. I really struggled to commit to the main character. I thought it was very middle of the road. So, yeah, but there is a good bit about opera. Just some of the premise of this book, like you only have so many songs in you as an opera singer, and eventually your voice will die out. I was just like, is that even true? And I think I didn't do it any favors, because I have had voice lessons for operatic singing. I mean, when I was younger and for a very brief time, but there was no talk of like, don't overuse your voice. And I don't know, it just seemed like a strange premise to sort of have bubbling underneath the surface. And I ultimately didn't sympathize with the character at all. I wasn't rooting for her. I didn't care. So in a lot of ways, this book failed. Continuing with this prompt of real extraordinary people, I read The Mare by Angahard Hampshire, who actually sent me the book herself, which was amazing. This book is published on very tiny press, Northodox press, and so there's no marketing budget, and so the author does the marketing herself. She sent me this book, which I appreciate, and she signed it for me, which I was like, oh, that's so great. So in this, the premise is this: Hermione Brunsteiner, she was a housewife, at one point she's a housewife in New York. She's very well liked by the neighbors, and it comes out through a New York Times article that she was actually a prison guard for concentration camps in Poland, and I believe in Austria. And what happens. And what's interesting is that it's also dual timeline. We're going back and forth in time. We are getting, I think it's Hermione, I think, but for my own horrible English language pronunciation, Hermione, when we follow her when she's young, when she's this young person, she doesn't come from money. She is taking jobs that will pay the bills. And in some ways, she finds herself working as a guard for a prison. And then we also get the present day, but from her husband's perspective, or the present timeline, the future timeline, from her husband's perspective. And he's so confused because he didn't know anything about her past. So Russell is like, how, my wife is so sweet, and I just can't imagine her doing any of these horrifying things. I couldn't even imagine her being part of the prison system. And so we read it, and it gets increasingly brutal and increasingly terrifying. So I would say a tip from me to you, do not look up anything about Hermione Brunsteiner before you read this book. It will probably spoil a lot of it for you if you read her. I read her Wikipedia page afterwards, which really just redoubled my disgust for her. You know, but I think it's answering the question of how does somebody get to the point where they're doing horrific things to other people, and like how do we get there? And so I think that Hampshire did a good job. There were some things that kind of frustrated me, like the lies that Russell and Hermione told to themselves in order to, I don't know, maintain dignity or maintain a sense of control of their own narratives. I found that very frustrating, and I do think that was on purpose. There was times where I wish it just had ever so slightly more nuance, but man, I was gripped by this because there was a way that I wanted it to go, and I wanted to know where it was going. And also, you know, one is reading about these conditions of concentration camps and the way that the guards were interacting with certain people, and you know, and it's horrifying. And there is something about that in reading it, and you're like, oh my gosh, like what's gonna happen, you know, or when is this gonna be over? And I think in some ways those questions of when is it gonna be over is kind of propelling you to read the next page. You're like, oh my, it can't get any worse. And so you're like propelled forward, wondering like when will the brutality stop? So it gave me nightmares for 2 days. Okay. Not because the writing was scary, but it was quite disturbing. And, but you know, well written, well constructed, really modern thought at the center of it all. Like, how does somebody become radicalized? How does somebody, a seemingly normal person, make choices that bring them to this moment? And so it was really fascinating. I might even buy my mom this book because I do think that she would find it of interest. And it, you know, because it is dual timeline, because you know, you have Russell and then you have Hermione's childhood and Russell's present day and Hermione's present day. So you have this back and forth, and they were both compelling. They were both interesting. They were both very readable. There wasn't one over the other. And I'm always attuned to that. Am I liking a storyline better than another? No. There was I was gripped by both. So yeah, probably a very important read. A very interesting read, but also incredibly dark. So just know that. And then the final book, which I've talked ad nauseum, so I'll keep it brief, but it is The Princess by Wendy Holden. That is, it's about Princess Diana's courtship, a fictionalized version of the courtship, but you know, with lots of real events in between of how Diana, you know, gets to courting and marrying Prince Charles. And it was so good. It was so good. I've made a whole video about my new obsession with Princess Diana. I went on to read a whole biography about Diana. And it was all because of Wendy Holden's book. She just got me very interested in it. And reading the biography about Diana made me realize like how much Wendy Holden fictionalized, or where she fictionalized things, where she kind of made Diana more sympathetic. Whereas, I mean, you know, Diana, I have come to learn there are like a billion books on her, and there are so many different sides that you can look at her from, you know, whether you're more on the British royal family side or whether you're more sympathetic towards Diana. And so this is still on my reading list, Diana, in Diana World and Obsession by Edward White, which I'm hoping to definitely read. But yeah, but it was all because of Wendy Holden's book that got me into it. And so A Real Extraordinary Person, that was definitely up my alley. A huge, wonderful raving. Please go read if you're at all interested in Diana. It was so good. It was so interesting and gripping, and my kind of read. Really, honestly, it was like the perfect Shelley read. So that's it from me. Yeah, I thank you so much for watching. If you participated, tell me what you read for Historical Fiction 2025. Were they good reads? Were they fabulous reads? I hope so. I really hope everybody's having a wonderful reading time. I had a great time. I got books checked off my list that I had been meaning to read for years. You know, sort of like the good, the bad, the ugly, all sprinkled throughout. Definitely worth it. But yeah, that's it for me. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. I hope to see you all in my next one. Bye.